Welcome to Joe Stunner Boxing yet again. Now, Conor Benn versus CHRIS EUBANK Jr. Part 2. It's really creeping up on us. I mean, it's a week Saturday. And do you know what? It hasn't just crept up on us. The point I wanted to make was there's been a complete lack of hype, I suppose. And you would have thought that all concerned would have gone into sort of overdrive with emphasising how great the first fight was, the drama behind it, with CHRIS EUBANK Sr. turning up when, a lot of people didn't think he would, reconciling with his son, the controversy afterwards with the ambulance not being allowed out of the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and all this stuff. The bad blood, egg gate, all that. They would emphasise all this and remind you of how great an event that was. By the way, I have to be honest, it won me over, and I wasn't a fan of the fight at all. I thought it was just a gimmick fight. I suppose it was a gimmick fight, but it turned out to be a great occasion, a lot of fun, brilliant fight, So you would think that in preparation for this rematch, you would think that the hype machine would be going into overdrive, but it hasn't. It hasn't. I mean, I watched the, what they call it, face-off thing between Benn and Eubank. It's always interesting with Conor because he keeps adding tattoos. He's run out of space on his body, so he's adding them to his face and his side of it. But there wasn't much on offer there. There was Conor was. And Conor, I've got to be honest, has warmed to me a little bit. I haven't forgotten the whole, business about the failed test or anything. Don't worry, I'm not completely turning. But I do see a certain maturity there, which wasn't there when he was irritatingly younger. And I don't know, maybe I think he's got a couple of kids now, isn't he? In which case that might, that I'm told I don't have children, but that can mature you pretty damn quickly if you've got any kind of moral compass. Anyway, you want to do the best for your kids. So maybe that's, made him more of a man and less of a boy. But he was, during the face-off, he was very sarcastic, he was almost being satirical towards Eubank. He said that he respected him. You're a good guy, Chris. I personally think you're a bit of a prick, but you're a good guy. It was all that sort of thing, not really tolerating anything coming back from Eubank. Eubank at one point called him a drugs cheat. Conor just laughed. I don't buy the idea that Conor is, has changed his character entirely. I'm sure he's still an absolute hothead. And I'm sure a lot of the laughter hid a lot of the anger. And he was saying to Eubank, look, I want to smash you up. I just want to beat the crap out of you. I just want to hurt you. And he was saying that before the first fight. He acknowledged that during the first fight, he allowed his emotions to get the better of him and said that wouldn't happen again. He just thought he was going to knock Chris out. And Chris says something I think that was really pertinent. It's kind of an obvious statement, but sometimes the obvious needs stating. He said, look, the moment you get hit, you'll revert to type. You'll go back to what you are, what you naturally are, which is a hot-headed, load up with every punch, swing for the heavens, scrapper, And I think that might be true. As far as Chris making the weight is concerned, I keep saying it. I mean, I do think it's a real. I do think it's a real issue. I think it was a real issue. I think it's been a real issue for quite some time. In the first fight, Eubank was shaken. Was it the second round? Ben hit him with a left hook, and he was shaken. He wasn't buzzed badly, but he shuddered, and momentarily lost his footing. And that's. I think that's probably down to weight. I still think that the first Liam Smith fight was a case of Eubank draining his body to get down to that original weight of 158 when he originally signed to fight Conor Benn. And then he took the first Liam Smith fight shortly afterwards, almost as a sort of substitute, because of what happened with the failed drug test, and he got knocked out. I just don't think he's a 160 pounder anymore. But I'm not privy to what goes on in that camp. He's working with Bomac. Again, that's another thing. You would think they would hype that up. Bomac, the trainer of one of the top 2 fighters in the world, Bud Crawford, coming off that, incredible unanimous win over Canelo. Why aren't they screaming from the rooftops about that? I mean, the face-off, or whatever it's called, was I wouldn't say it was a damp squib, but there was a lot of we've heard it all before. Ben was more entertaining. Eubank was being, as usual, like his father. He speaks in a very measured way. He just doesn't have his father's eccentricities, and that's often viewed as a sign of intelligence. But actually, being measured and thoughtful, of course, is very important. It's a skill. It's something that we should all try to do. But usually, there isn't. The most intelligent people are usually sharp with it. I always thought that Eubank Senior, and to a lesser extent his son, although they're by no means unintelligent fellas, they're both intelligent men, but the sort of intellectual pretensions aren't really there, because if you have that great intellect, you're normally sharp and you can sort of rattle things off quite quickly. Eubank, very measured, very sort of trying to project this image of serenity almost. And Ben was sort of talking over him and not really letting him speak that much. He did say, Chris Eubank, this is, if I don't like something, if I see something I don't like, I hear about something I don't like, I say so, which is okay. That's fine. That's I like opinionation, because you know where you stand with people if they're opinionated. And anybody who says nothing, falls for anything. The people that never stick their head above the parapet are usually the ones that don't contribute anything. At some point, you have to give views, you have to have opinions, you have to make judgments. The cult of non-judgmentalism is very sort of in vogue in this modern world. But I like people that make judgments, that assess situations, that have the guts to say, I think this. And Chris Eubank Jr. does this. He called Conor Benn a drugs cheat. He said, you're a drugs cheat, And Conor brushed it off. Well, you're going back to that, are you? Yeah. If I was Eubank, I'd be saying, yeah, I am, because you're a bloody drugs cheat. Twice, you failed. So I like that from Eubank, but Ben was clearly trying to rely on a sort of snide humour in a sense, which was quite entertaining. I did not enjoy it. But this is not really, this face-off is not really, it wasn't really something everybody jumped on. There hasn't been an egg slap during this build-up. There hasn't been much brouhaha at all. There are no bells and whistles with this one. It's all, here comes part 2. And I think a lot of people are sort of saying, well, it's gone a bit flat. Now, I'm not saying it won't be a good fight. It may well be, but you've got to wonder about. I'll be interested to see the pay-per-view sales on this. Not least of all because the undercard, I think, is mediocre at best. I don't think it's a very good, very entertaining undercard. And none of this has the sort of historical element to it, because we've heard it before. Eubank versus Ben. The fathers did it. Now the sons are doing it. We've seen it happen. So I have doubts whether this is going to be, a massive success financially. If it's a great fight, that's brilliant, and the first one was a terrific fight. And I want it to be a great fight. Of course I do. We all do. We're boxing fans. We want to see some stuff. But the build-up seems to be a little flat to me. And I wonder if that will be reflected in the amount of people who put a hand in their pocket and buy the pay-per-view, especially in light of the weak undercard. So what do you think? You with me on this, or do you disagree? Whatever you feel, put your comments down below and explain your reasoning. Please do that. I like reading your comments. I always read your comments. I don't answer to all of them because there's fucking hundreds of them, but I do read them. I assure you I get around to it eventually. Please leave your comments. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, by all means, click the like button if you feel inclined, and also subscribe to the channel if you're new. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Looking forward to reading what you've got to say. Bye for now.